Hi everyone. This is going to be a video about finishing your paintings. I'm not going to actually paint a painting in this one. This is one that I have done previously, and the buyer asked if I would mount it on cradle board and resin over top of it instead of just matting it to frame. So I thought this might be a really good opportunity to make a video for you all showing some of that, how you can do it. First, I want to tell you about what I did to the painting to even get it ready to resin. And then we'll get into the next step after that. I'm going to move this out of the way, y'all. Sorry, I don't want to get paint on it by accident. That would be a catastrophe, especially since it's already sold. Okay, these are the two finishes that I use on them. I layer, can't tell what that is. I layer these, I have several coats of these on a painting after I get done. Once your painting is dry, and I mean beyond dry, I let mine set usually I try to let them set for at least a week before I do anything else to them, especially if you've got a lot of metallic in it, because that metallic, it stays a little tacky longer than the alcohol ink does, and you want to make sure, absolutely sure, that everything is perfectly dry. So once it's dry, if I can get one of these boards, I'll show you what I do. And actually, to let them dry, this is what I use. When I'm done with a painting, after a few hours or the next day, once I'm sure I can touch it without being a problem, I use this. I know you all can't see this very good, and I'm really sorry. This is just a piece of like foam project board type stuff you can get at Walmart or anywhere, dollar stores probably. It's just a kind of a heavy piece of foam board, and I just use painter's tape, as you can see, that's rolled up on there. Let me grab a painting I've got laying here, and I just stick down my paintings on there. It won't come off, but it will come off if you pull it, so that's a good thing. I just stick them on there, and then I lean my board up against the wall and let everything sit. And once my board is full, I let it sit for a little while longer, unless I need to get a painting done more quickly. If I need to finish it for somebody, then as long as it's been sitting for at least close to a week, then I'll go ahead and seal it. Alright, so the first step, after your painting's dry, get it on something, that's a hard surface so that you can hold on to it good. Take it outside. Don't do this inside. This is Krylon Camar Varnish. This is just a sealant and a protectant. It's non-yellowing, so Krylon says anyway, but it's non-yellowing. It will protect your alcohol ink from scratches, and you actually, if you've ever done one and rubbed your hand across it, even once it's dry, you can see some of the color rub off on your hand. And I actually damaged some paintings when I first started because I was stupid enough to kind of stack them on top of each other. And I'll tell you another way I damaged these same paintings. But they rubbed together because I was moving them around a lot, just moving them here and there to get them out of my way. And it did scratch the paintings because I had not sealed them yet. I didn't realize how easy they could be damaged. Alright, so this will seal your painting. Also, alcohol inks, as you know, can be reactivated by alcohol. Many of these varnish sprays like this have got alcohol in them. So when you spray them, you can reactivate your ink, and it causes this kind of, everything just kind of spreads and blends, and it's it doesn't look good anymore. Or you can also get little spots on your painting where if your spray doesn't come out good and even, you can make little spots on it, and you can't get rid of it after that, obviously. So this is what I used, because this does not reactivate the inks. This has, you know, acetone in it, but I don't think it has actual alcohol in it. I'm not sure what it has in it, but it doesn't reactivate your ink anyway. So what you want to do with this is spray on a light coat. You don't want to go heavy with this. Now if you go heavy with it, it might start, you know, causing some damage to your ink. So spray on a light coat. Let that dry for at least 20 to 30 minutes. I've heard people say you should wait 24 hours between each coat. I don't do that, and I never have, and I have not had any paintings get damaged, but that's just me. You know, you can do it however you want, but I usually wait about 20 to 30 minutes, at least after the initial coat. Now, the more coats you get on, obviously the longer it needs to dry, so keep that in mind. But I put on that initial coat. I'm sorry, y'all may shake here for a second. I just realized that the table was up against my tripod, and every time I move, since I'm terrible to, you know, talk with my hands, it was shaking the whole camera. Alright, so put on your first coat, let it dry. Once you're completely sure it's all the way dry, you don't want it tacky at all. Put on another light coat, same thing again. It's got to be 100% dry. Put on another light coat. You're going to want to do this with about 4 to 5 coats of this. I have done it. I started at one point doing it with a little bit less, and I ended up with one of my paintings that I had done in eggplant, which is a very sensitive color anyway. It lost all its purple. It just kind of turned gray. And I'm not sure if it had to do with, I didn't have enough of the Camar on before I put the UV protectant on. I'm not sure. But since I started doing a few more coats on it, or a couple more coats on it, it's been doing better. So anyway, you want to get at least 4 or 5 coats of the Camar varnish on there. Now once that is dry, and I mean really dry, let that one sit for a while. Once you get your last coat of this on, I would recommend waiting until the next day before you start with the next step, which is this, or something like it. This is what I use, is the Krylon UV Archival Varnish. This is semi-gloss. I couldn't get gloss the last time I bought any of this, but semi-gloss is fine. It actually looks really good with the semi-gloss. They also, it comes in matte if you prefer your paintings to be matte. I think it comes in satin as well, so, you know, it doesn't matter what finish it has on it. But this UV Archival Varnish will help protect your inks from fading. Alcohol inks are not light fast, not at all, especially not strong sunlight. So they will fade out in record time, in less than a year, if you don't treat them with something, if they're in bright sunlight anyway. They will fade over time, even if they're not in bright sunlight, just from, you know, residual UV rays that are all over the place from the sun coming in your house, from some lights put off some UV rays, different things. But so you follow the exact same process with this that you did with the Camar. You know, put on a light coat, make sure it's dry. Remember, this is going to take a little more drying time in between, because by now you've built up, you know, several layers. And I would put on at least 4 or 5 coats of this. If your coats are super light, super thin, you want to probably put more than that on, just to make sure, because you don't want to sell a painting to somebody, especially, and have them, you know, after a year messaging you saying, well, what happened to my painting, because it's completely faded and, you know, I can't even see part of the colors. So do that, at least 4 or 5 coats, 6 or 7 if you're putting super thin coats on, but you don't want to put super thick coats on either. It'll run, and you run the chance of this reactivating the Camar varnish that you put on first. So that is your first steps, or your last steps actually, in finishing a painting. First the Camar, several coats of that, then the UV archival, or something similar, something that is UV protectant. This is what I use. Several coats of this after that. Both of these, I do have Amazon affiliate links in the drop down box below. I do order mine from Amazon so that I can get it several cans at a time. Plus it's just really hard to find in craft stores and things. Occasionally you can find this Camar in the craft section at Walmart. It is not in the paint section. It's in the craft section, but they don't have it all the time. I think they only get a couple of cans at a time in, and it disappears really quickly. Alright, so you can stop after that if you want. Once you get all this on, you need to let it set for at least another week. I always just leave mine on the boards. You know, be careful, watch out for fuzz, bugs, whatever, as you're spraying these, because it's like when you're resining, these things, for some reason, you know, it's like a magnet and it just sucks everything in there. So try to make sure it's not a windy day and that there's a lot of mess blowing around in the air when you're doing this. Of course, you don't want to spray paint when it's windy anyway. Alright, so you can stop there once it's completely dry after, honestly, I would say a couple of weeks. I leave it on the board at least a couple of weeks. Once it's completely dry, then you can mat it, frame it, whatever you want to do. If you want to continue on and resin it, once all that's done and it's completely dry, then you can get something like this, which is just a artist quality cradle board. This one is an 11 by 14, because that's the size painting that I'm going to be putting on this. So I have, I can't remember, I don't think I have added the links yet to this. I'm trying to remember where I got these from. I'm really sorry. I think I got from Michael's. So, but you can find these, Amazon, Michael's, most craft stores will carry things like this. I have not looked at Hobby Lobby. I don't know if they have these or not. So, alright, so this is just a cradle board that you can either paint on, resin on, whatever, but I'm going to be mounting the painting on this. So the first thing I did was I taped off the bottom edges here on the back. So you can see up under. All I did was put my tape up very, very close to the edge. I tried not to overlap. Not that it really matters that much for this step, because, this is just a way to keep your back a little bit neater on your board. So I use the frog tape. You can use whatever you want, just make sure it peels off easily. Any kind of painter's tape would probably be okay. I just prefer the frog tape to the blue painter's tape that some people use. So that's what I use, is frog tape. And there's no special magic to this. I roll it out. I could have done this on camera for you all, but I was trying to not make this take quite so long, since it's going to be a long video anyway. I just roll it out, take some scissors and snip it off, the length I need, stick it down. If it's a little too long hanging over the edge, just trim it off. These are just sort of extra large push pins. I think I picked up I got these from Target. Just anywhere that you can find these. Office supply stores have these. Oh, actually, I take that back. I got these at Office Depot. I'm almost positive. So, this is just to make legs for it, because you're going to want it standing up. When I paint this, I don't want it laying flat down in case I get a little paint on the bottom so it doesn't stick. But when you get around to resining it, you're going to want to have that on there so you don't end up having to sand off resin drips if any of the resin happens to get over on that. So that's all you got to do right there. Now the first step in this, because this person wants it white for the background, you can also stain it. Wood stain is beautiful on these as well. I am just using a latex, see there, big bucket of latex paint and primer in one. It does not matter what brand you use. It does not, if you're gonna resin it, it doesn't matter if you use matte or satin or semi-gloss or whatever. This is semi-gloss because this is what I had because I was using it for another project. So I started using it on these boards as well. You can use gesso. You can use any, basically acrylic paint. Paint the background any color you want because you're going to be pouring resin over it anyway, so it doesn't matter. Alright, so I've got my paint all stirred up. I'm giving it another stir since I've been sitting here talking. You can use one of the foam brushes, any paintbrush. This is actually a blender brush, but it was the first thing I managed to drag out right now, so that's what I'm going to use for this. And then you're just going to put a coat or two on this. Now, whether you put one or two, it just kind of depends on, I'm going to end up knocking the lid off here with the board in a minute. Just depends on your paint, you know, the kind of coverage that you get. Y'all can't see that. I just splattered paint all over my arm. That's what happens when I talk and don't pay attention to what I'm doing. Yep, I have a nice speckled arm now. So you're just gonna, you know, this one is probably gonna require 2 coats of paint. Most likely you're gonna need at least 2 coats of paint. So I'm not gonna show me putting on the other coat because there's just really no reason to do that. I'm sorry if I'm getting this out of y'all's view. I figure you kind of understand the process of just painting something with white paint. So make sure you get your edges. You know, you don't want to get finished with everything and then realize you have forgotten one of your sides. Yes, it does happen. Ask me how I know. Because I'm an idiot sometimes. Yeah, I did actually do that. I actually forgot to paint one side of a board one time, but luckily I did notice it before I got the resin on, although it did slow me down because then I had to stop and paint the other side of my board and wait on it to dry. I'm not sure why I was in such a hurry that day, but yes, it does happen when you're a little airheaded like I can be sometimes. The great thing about doing this is you don't need a respirator for this. I like doing things I don't need a respirator for because I really don't like breathing in one. I can breathe in them, but I don't like breathing the hot air that comes out. Lost my paper towel here. See if I can get some of these speckles off my arm before they dry, or this arm. Yeah, little spotted my shirt a little do there. Luckily, it was an old one. Alright, so then you're just going to do the same thing to the top. Just put a coat on the top and, you know, try and make sure that you get it even. When you're doing this, just kind of keep an eye. Make sure that you don't get, let me see if I can do this to where y'all can see it. You don't want to go across the grain of your wood. You want to go with the grain of your wood, but I'm just going to try and show you. If you see that when you're doing the edges, you can see sometimes you can get that little bit of paint that goes over and makes a little roll right there, and you don't want that. You want to try and keep that from happening. So make sure you check your edges when you get done to make sure you didn't get any sort of overspill right there where you don't want it. Yeah, I try to get all the loose bristles out, but I've decided it's never possible. So you just do this, and then I will let this dry. Sorry, yeah, I'm going sideways right here. I will let this dry for a few hours, and then I will come back and put another coat on. Good grief. This is a new brush, you can tell. It's I tried to scrub it good with my hand to make sure I'd gotten all the loose bristles out of it, but that did not work, obviously. Anyway, I'll come back and put another coat on it after a few hours once I'm sure that this is dry good. And what you want to be concerned with the most, and now if your painting is going to cover the whole board, what you want to be concerned with the most is getting the sides, because that's the part that's going to show. You know, you're not going to have anything showing here at the top. And so you really, if your painting's going all the way to the edges on the top, you don't have to put a second coat on here. One coat will be fine on the top. Just make sure you get a second coat on your edges. So before I leave it, I'll just try and make sure it's smooth down good. You know, you want to try and get out all the brush strokes you can, obviously, because you don't want a bumpy, rough surface for your painting underneath. Or you don't want a bumpy, rough surface underneath your painting. So I'm just checking it for any little overrun there, because I don't want that. And sticking my arm in it. I have this great way of, anytime I'm painting anything, now this happens with my alcohol inks too, but more often with if I'm using acrylics or if I'm just painting something even in the house, you know, house paint or something, I have this great ability to cover myself with it. You should have seen me a few years ago. We repainted the outside of our house ourselves, and I'm pretty sure I matched our house for several days after that until I could get all of it scrubbed off good, because it did not want to come off. Alright, so that's got a nice smooth coat on there. I'm going to wash out my brush. Don't leave your brush wet, obviously, or it will be ruined. But if you wash it out now with this latex paint, you just need some water. Just wash it with a little bit of warm water. Wash it good. Make sure you get all your paint out of it. And then set it aside to dry until you're ready to come back to it. And that is step one. I will probably, I don't know, I can show you all the second step of putting this on if you want to, but I don't know. I'll either let you all watch me do it in fast forward or just skip it, because you know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put another border around there. This painting is I'm going to do another layer on top of this one, because I laid the painting down on this board, and that's something you need to do too. Lay it on your board to make sure of your size, and if you're going to need to trim your painting any, so you'll kind of know, you know, where it's going to go. But this, I noticed the board is just like a fraction of an inch longer than the painting on each side. So what I'm going to do is actually trim off just a fraction of an inch of the painting, so that it'll, you know, I can't even show you. I mean, you're going to have like maybe, I don't know, less than 1/8 of an inch, maybe 1/16 of an inch on each side here, but it will be seen. So that's one reason I am going ahead and doing a top coat as well as another coat on the sides of this. So, all right, well, I am going to go and let this dry, and I will be back with you all shortly. Okay, I'm back. There are 3 coats of white on my cradle board now. So I've still got it with the tape and the legs on it. The push pins and the tape will stay on it until after it's finished being resined. Now, if you remember, I had mentioned that the painting was just a touch too big for, well, it's, you know, it's a touch too, the painting is a touch too small on the short ends. So I need, so that it's even, you know, on the board has the same exact border around it everywhere on the board. I need to trim off just a touch off of one, you know, the long sides here. So I'm using this. You definitely don't have to buy one of these. I just have it because I can't cut good with an X-Acto knife. I'll use it if I have to, but I really prefer not to because I struggle to cut a straight line with an X-Acto knife. Sorry, I flipped that over because that upper edge wasn't sitting flat against this. So I'm going to use this paper cutter that I have here just for playing around with other things, cutting bookmarks and things like that. So, but all I'm going to do, if I can unlock it, all I'm going to do with this is just shave off just the tiniest bit, like maybe 1/8 of an inch off of my painting. So I'm actually using the little cutting, the bottom cutting blade part to measure it by to make sure I got it exactly straight in there. Alright. And I didn't get it far enough. I should have marked this. I actually started to, laid it down on the board and started to mark it. And then I realized, well, I didn't want to get pencil mark on my board. And the only chalk that I have is white. And so I didn't want it wasn't going to show up on this. Plus it would have been too thick of a line anyway, so. Alright, try that again, see if I can get that out. There we go. So see, just trim that little edge off, and the only thing that was lost was one teeny little spot of color right there, which will never be missed. Alright. Let me set this back in the box real quick. I keep this put up because I definitely don't want the granddaughters playing around with that thing. They know they would be in some massive trouble if I caught them with that, but best not to tempt them by leaving it out. Okay, now, what you need for this part is your board, your painted board. You know, sand it down a little bit before you paint it. Get some of them will have little splinters, stuff at the edges. You want to kind of sand it a little bit to make sure it's nice and smooth. See, that's just about perfect now. I've just got that tiny little edge all the way around there now, which will be perfect. Sorry, there was some fuzz and things on the edge of this, and I was trying to get that off. I'm going to have to, I don't know how I didn't notice this before. Sorry, I got to get the paper cutter back out, because I just noticed this was the last page in the pack of Yupo, and it left a very kind of jagged edge right there. I just need to shave that little rough edge off. I'm glad I noticed that in time. For that, you actually could probably just take a sharp knife or something and kind of scrape it along there, and that would get it off. Because I don't want to lose really any of the painting on this. I just want to get the tiniest sliver possible off of there. I'm sorry, I should have paid more attention to this before. I think I had noticed that at some point when I tore it off the pad, but then I'd forgotten about it. Alright, so see, I mean, I just took off like the tiniest little sliver just to get it evened up right there. Yep, perfect. Alright. Alright, now we can get to what you need for this, for this part of it. Okay, alright, so you need your board. Obviously, you need your painting. Also, the way I do it, now there's, you know, I've seen people do this in different ways, but the way that I do it is I use some parchment paper, so, you know, you might want to have that on hand. I'm going to use the Liquitex Gloss Gel Medium for this, just to use, it's going to be my adhesive for attaching the painting to the board. That I've used a couple of different things, and I really like the Liquitex gel. It doesn't have to be the gloss, obviously, if you're going to attach it to your board, but because nobody's going to see it. But that's what I have to use for other things, so that's what I'm using. Alright. The parchment paper, it does not matter what brand or anything else. This is, I mean, I got this from a grocery store where I do a lot of our grocery shopping. Just cheapo store brand parchment paper. I also have a couple of paper towels waiting and a little spray bottle of water so that if the gel comes out, which it probably will, it's going to have a little bit seep out from under here and there. So I can have some damp paper towels to do it with. And I use this, I don't have a brayer. I actually have just ordered one, so hopefully I will have one the next time I need to mount something. But so what I'll be doing real quickly, just run over it with you, is I'm going to be, you know, I'll put my fuzz on that. Put my gel medium down on my board, and then I'm going to get this on it, and it's got to be kind of a quick process. You know, you don't want your gel to dry, and you got to get it positioned a little bit quickly. So you get that down on there. You know, just take your hands, rub it down, put your parchment paper over top, and then use something, I mean, this is just one of those kind of the wider craft stick things that I use for stirring resin and stuff with, and then I'll just be using it to smooth out any bumps and to sort of, you know, press any extra off to the side, or out of the side, so that I can wipe it off. Oh, excuse me. Alright. Get myself organized here. So this is just the Liquitex gel medium. You can also use Mod Podge for this. I have used that and it worked just fine. I have not had any trouble with the Mod Podge coming up either. One thing, do not use. I did a video on this one time, and I used, I still have it here because I'll probably never use it again. I used this Elmer's multi-purpose spray adhesive. Don't use it. It might work good for some things, but it did not work good for this. I thought it worked good until I went back to, although it stinks. Oh my gosh, it stinks worse than anything I've ever used. I went back to my paintings that I had mounted with that, the Elmer stuff, a couple of weeks later, and they were just bubbling up everywhere, where the adhesive I don't know what, it dried out and came loose. That's supposed to be a, like, you know, you can move your stuff around for a while, but apparently it really moved. I don't know what it did. The stuff came up. Even though I had left it setting books on top of it, you know, for a long time to let it dry. Once the weight was off of it, things started just, the air bubbles started coming up underneath it. And so when I went to try to pull the painting off to see if I could sand down the board and maybe reaffix the painting to it, well, it decided it was going to stick then, and I completely ruined the painting. So I just got a little foam applicator here to put the gel on with, the gel medium. And remember, you don't want this on your sides. You just only need it on the top of your board. And you don't want it super thick either. You want it, you know, get a coat of it on there, but sorry, I may have to tip this some because it's very difficult to see where this is at on this white paint. And you don't want to miss any areas. That's right, you want to get it thick enough to make sure that you're not missing any place. But, you know, when you go to apply your pressure, you know, and rake the extra stuff out from under, you don't want to have gobs of it oozing out around your painting. I mean, you can get it off if you have a gob, as long as it's not dried, but it's just kind of a pain and it's very wasteful. And as most of you know, if you've already been buying art supplies, they are not cheap. So you don't want to waste them if you can help it. Now on this, I am going both ways just because I want to make absolutely certain that it is completely covered underneath there. I wouldn't do that on the paint because it will leave some marks. You know, your brush marks will be crisscrossed, so you don't want to do that. Apparently my little applicator's got some fuzz in it. I'm going to have to pick a little fuzz out here. It's been sitting over there on the shelf because I haven't bothered to mount anything for a while. Now I can't really tell you how much of this to use other than, you know, not super thick and not so thin that you're not going to have enough for your painting to stick. Just, you know, basically like act like you're painting, I guess. You're putting a coat of paint on it. You just want to make sure it's everywhere, that it's thick enough to cover, but that it's you know, thin enough that it's not gonna look bad. Alright, now get to talking and this stuff's gonna dry before I can get the painting on there. Alright, not good that my hands are a little sticky though. Now this is always the tricky part, is getting your painting positioned before it decides that it's not moving anymore, because that happens. And once you get it down a certain amount, it's just gonna suction itself to your board like it already did. Wow, I've got that so crooked. Okay. Sticky fingers. All right. Now, just put your parchment paper right over top of that, and then give it a good, just, you know, rub with your hands. Just kind of start from the center and work your way out so that If there's any air bubbles stuck under there, you can get that out. And once I've done that, I'll take the my wooden stick. If you have a brayer, then you can do it with that then. And then you just want to run it along there. Make sure you overlap your spots too. This is, I like to go back and forth different directions just to make sure that I got everything down on there as good as I possibly can. Alright, raise your paper up, give it a check to see that is stuck down wonderfully. I'm just going to spray, I'm just spritzing a little bit of water on my paper towel here because I wanted to run that around the edge just to make sure that there's no gobs of gel medium left on there. And if you get some up on your painting, it is really not a big deal because, you know, the damp paper towel will take it off. See a couple of little air bubble spots in there. One thing you gotta watch if you have to put this back down, I always turn it over the other way because you've got gel on it from where you did it the first time and you don't want to rub that onto your painting. So oh, one other thing I'd forgotten to mention to be sure you have ready to use is something heavy to set on top of this. You want it to stay, you want to keep the pressure on it until it's completely dry. You know, you need to give it, I like to give it a few days before I take the pressure off of it, but I probably tend to use overkill, I don't know. But I leave it on there for a few days. Alright. Oop, I don't want my paper. No more coming out. Also, be sure your hands are nice and clean before you do this and you don't have anything on them because you don't want to get icky, like dark places stuck from where the gel medium comes out. If you touch it with your hands, you don't want to get dark spots around your white right there. Alright, grab my parchment paper which ran away. And one of the reasons I use parchment paper is because it won't adhere to this at all. This is an excellent thing to use if you are stacking paintings once they're completely dry and you've got them sealed and that's all dry. Stacking them for storage until you can frame them or sell them or whatever. And put a sheet of parchment paper between your paintings and just lay them in a box and you can actually stack them until you're ready to mat them or whatever it is you're doing. And what do I do with my stuff? Alright, so I'm just putting this on first because this will complete, it's this exact same size. It's an 11 by 14 pack of boards. In case you want to see, this is what, these things are awesome for mounting stuff on like this. So I'm just going to flip it over so that the flat part is entirely even with the other. And then I'll grab some books here in just a little bit and I'll, you know, weight it down some more with some books. And then I will leave it sitting for a few days. And once that is all done and dry, then I will be back to resin it. So I will be back soon. Okay, I am back and ready to resin this. It is completely dried. It's been sitting for a few days. I've knocked stuff into it now though. Oh great, my table's wobbling. There's not what you want when you're getting ready to do resin. I had everything level, but I may have just knocked it out of level. Sorry. Alright. I'm using art resin. That's just what I have. This art resin is a 1-to-1 ratio resin. You just equal parts of the resin and the hardener. That's what's in these 2 cups. I haven't mixed it yet. I went ahead and measured it out off camera just to keep the video from being any longer than it's already going to be. I'm trying to figure out how I can get you all where you can see. Let me move this a second. So all I'm doing is mixing the resin and the hardener together. This has been just one of those evenings, y'all, that has been nuts trying to get this stuff ready and together. Alright, so I let the resin set in a warm water bath for about 20 minutes in very warm water, not hot. You know, you don't want to boil it or anything, but in very warm water. It will thin it a little bit, helps it flow a little bit easier, and helps it degas those air bubbles that will get in it just a little bit easier as well. Alright, once you get these mixed together, or get them in the same cup, you want to stir for about 5 minutes. I think that art resin's directions say 3 minutes. This just tells you how long it's been since I actually read the directions. But I usually just, I stir until it's perfectly clear. Now if you can see this, let's see if I can see it. It's cloudy looking. I'm not sure how good you all can see it. It's not clear right now, it's cloudy. So you want to stir, and not too quickly, so that you don't make a ton of air bubbles in it. You're going to make some no matter what you do, but stir it until it is perfectly clear, just crystal clear, and then stir it for another minute or 2 after that. That's kind of what I do. So whenever, I mean, even if you follow their directions exactly, if it says 3 minutes, you stir it for 3 minutes. It still is not going to hurt to go ahead and stir it for another minute or so after that. You've got a good 30 to 45 minute minimum working time with your resin. So, you know, you're not going to have any trouble getting it on your painting before it starts to set up. You start to have issues with it. While I'm stirring this, I'll tell you, you'll notice I did put a little tape dam around the sides of that. I decided I didn't want it going down the sides of the painting. I just wanted to kind of dome it up on top of it on this one. So I did go ahead and make a little tape dam around it. I don't always do that, but had just decided to this time. I have a heat gun laying here in case I need it, and I also have a little butane torch, which is a big mess. Had this thing for a long time now, but it works good, and you'll see that will help degas some of those bubbles, pop the little bubbles in it once you get it on the painting. Although I'm going to have to be a little extra careful today because I've got that tape on there. You don't want to melt your tape into your painting. That's another thing. Whenever you're using a torch or a heat gun, you know, you don't want to overheat your resin. It can burn. So, I don't mean, you know, I don't mean like literally catch on fire, although it possibly could do that too. But it'll scorch and leave a yucky look on your painting wherever it has scorched at. So just be real careful. You want to be very light-handed with the heat that you're applying to it. So this is starting to get clear. Can you all see the difference now? But it's still not, like when I look down in it, it's still just a touch marbly looking. So I'm going to keep on stirring. Always be sure that you rake the sides of your cup. You know, rake your stick off. Make sure you're getting the bottom of your cup as well. Especially if whatever you're mixing in has got any type of little grooves. The flatter it is, the better. You don't want to use something that's got a whole lot of grooves. In fact, I'm going to pour this into another cup just because this is got the brand name of the cup like embossed in the bottom of it. And so it's, I mean, any little spot that doesn't get mixed in really well can leave you a sticky place in your resin that you're going to end up having to try and sand out, scrape out, and then sand, and then re-pour your resin. It doesn't mean your painting's ruined. It just means you've got a lot of extra work to get it back to where you want it. And I probably made too much resin tonight, but I was trying to err on the side of caution. And my measuring cups, which I highly recommend that you use, something that has measurements on it. But my measuring cups, somehow or other, the last time I resined, I set them, I never do this either, I set them on the shelf. I've got a big shelf with supplies and things on it. And I set them over there on the shelf and then completely forgot about them. So they are sticky and gross. And one has dried up resin in it. You know, one has hardener. One has the resin portion, you know, that's unmixed. So, alright, so this is all clear now, except for a bunch of air bubbles that I've managed to stir up in it. But that's pretty normal. That's going to happen. And so I'm going to pour it into this other cup now, just in case there are any, that there's any of the resin or the hardener part that might be stuck down in those little letters. It's just an extra safety precaution to make sure that you don't end up with like a place you might have missed on the side of your cup or anything. Sometimes I actually change sticks too, but I don't usually have any trouble with it. So it's really recommended that you not do this, like try and scrape out your cup like this, but I always do, or I've heard other people recommend you don't do that, but I always do. Resin is extremely expensive, as any of you who have bought it already know, and I just refuse to waste any of it if I can help it. So, but once I get it in this cup, I always stir it just for a little bit longer, just to make sure that, you know, anything that did come up that I scraped down that wasn't mixed in good, just to make sure that that does get blended in. I would much rather err on the side of caution than have to spend an entire extra day trying to repair damage that I did just because I wasn't willing to take my time and be careful. So all I used on the painting was the frog tape again, the painter's tape stuff. Let me set this back over here. Trying to get it where you all can see it good. Alright, I also have a tote ready to set on top of this because you want to get it covered up as quickly as you can to keep out any little fuzzies, or, you know, if you have pets, you know that there's pet hair around constantly And you want to make sure there's none of that on your painting before you start, and you want to get covered up just as quickly as you can. Some people actually have, they wet down their room. They'll go around with a water mister. If you do that, make sure that your painting is not anywhere where that water can get on it, because you can't resin something that's wet. It will ruin your resin if it gets wet. So if you do the warm water bath, make sure you dry your resin bottles before you start pouring. I always take a couple of paper towels with me and wipe them off as I get them out. So I'm going to blow my heat gun down in here just for a second, just to warm it back up a little. It's already cooling down. It took me so long to get everything ready. Plus, it might help get a few of the bubbles out that are in there while it's still in the cup. Honestly, I don't know if that even really helps or not, but I do that a lot of times just to, you know, it makes me feel better. I feel like it helps. And once you've got it all mixed and you're confident that it's completely mixed and nothing is left, not even the tiniest little bit of marbling in there, you know, just pour it on. I was trying to pour this on a little bit thin as I was pouring it, so, you know, just so some of those bubbles could more easily work their way up. And one thing with pouring it in this cup like this, I don't have to be worried about scraping out what's left in this cup, because I know that it's mixed. I know that there's no chance that there's a glob of, you know, hardener or something that didn't get mixed in good. I can get all I want to out with that. I'm going to hit it with my heat gun. That'll help pop some bubbles and spread it just a little bit. One thing I usually do is I see a fuzzy. It's also a good idea to have something like this or a little pair of tweezers or something like that. So if you see something in there, you can get it out. Oh, my paper towel's gone. All right, I'll just put it up there. This is just a silicone mat that I have that the resin will actually come back off of, so it won't hurt a thing to get resin on it. Anyway, what I was getting ready to say was I normally use my hands to spread this out, because I was worried I had too much, and I really don't hardly have enough. Just barely gonna be enough, I think. I just feel like I get better coverage when I use my hands than when I'm trying to spread it out with this stick or something, and I'm probably going to end up resorting to that. I can feel places on the painting where I might have missed if I'm using my hands instead of something like this stick. I mean, with the lights, it can get a little bit tricky to see places that you might have missed at times. So if you can feel those places, it makes it a little bit simpler. I was going to try not to get it up on the... I'm going to end up having to take this tape off probably. I was trying not to get it up on the tape because I don't want a sharp edge on it. And I've bumped it all up against that tape everywhere, so I'm probably getting ready to take that off here in just a second. And I am probably going to be a huge mess because I'm going to end up with resin all over me. Resining these paintings, they look amazing when you resin them. It really, just the shine and the depth and stuff of resin is just incredible to me. But it is sort of a nerve-wracking process for me. I'm always worried that I'm going to ruin something. I've just got the heat set on about 3 on that, just sort of a medium heat on it. Get a little more there. Alrighty, see more fuzzies. Oh, I lost it. Where'd it go? I think sometimes I feel like I live in the most fuzz-ridden house in the world. It's one of those never-ending processes to pick fuzz out of a painting. And then try and, race the fuzz to get it covered up before the fuzz can get back on it. Alright, what I'm doing right now, I'm going to try and get some of this away from the edge so that when I peel this tape back, it doesn't all instantly pour right over the edge, but I think it may be a losing battle because it's moving back faster than I can push it away. So, let's see. We see. I was hoping to not have to babysit this forever tonight too, raking resin off the bottom. So you can see with the painter's tape though, it just peels right off. Doesn't pull the, your paint off of the edge or anything too. So, at least I've not had it do it yet. Oops. I get to looking too much at one side and I forget about the other one, and I've got resin running off that I didn't want to. Alright, get off there. Alright, now that I'm already a huge sticky mess from that, I don't feel a bit bad about using my hands. And one good thing about doing it this way, without the tape on the edge, is you can get, that little bit of resin layer on the sides too. So you give it that little shine and that little bit of extra protection for your paint on the sides if you have it painted. You don't want to let a whole lot run over if you can help it though, because otherwise you'll end up with, buildup down at your bottom edge or even drips that are kind of hanging off the bottom. Now, because I showed y'all where I have tape on the bottom of this, it's not going to, I could peel that tape off and it'd be fine. But, sorry, I'm getting off to the side here where I can see good, make sure I've got everything covered perfectly. But you'll have little ridges where it runs. See right there, it was doing that right there. So I'm just going to put that right back in the middle. It'll leave ridges on the side of your painting though. So I'm guessing I probably knocked this painting out of balance again a little bit. This table is terrible. It rocks every time I move. I keep shimming it up with things, and then I will bump it when I'm working on videos or when I'm painting in here, or the girls come running through and bump it, or they come in to talk to me and they lean their elbows on it or something, and the whole thing just kind of slides off of the little pieces of wood I've got it shimmed up with. I need to just take a couple of nails and just tack in some stuff to where it can't shift easily. Now, I usually keep paper towel wrapped around my torch just because of this, so I don't get resin on it, but another one of those things that I forgot to do tonight. This has been one of those Murphy's Law nights for me anyway, where anything that could go wrong does go wrong, so it doesn't surprise me a bit that I forgot that too. Y'all should have seen me running around digging for stuff. I couldn't even find my torch. It took me 15 minutes of looking for my torch, which is supposed to be on my shelf, but I had straightened up in here a few days ago, and I put some things away and moved them to different spots, and then I couldn't remember where I put anything. So my organized mess works for me. So it's a problem for me to actually figure out where things are when it's truly organized and not just an organized mess. Up there. All right. And when you're doing this, you're probably going to have to pop bubbles a few times, and you're definitely going to have to keep running your hands around the edges there. I can't really pick it up and show it to you, show you what I'm talking about, because then I would really have resin going everywhere. If you have a lot of it run over the edges, make sure you run your fingers underneath the bottom edge as well, to make sure that you don't have any drips hanging down there. Now, that's not likely to be a big problem unless you just, really pour a lot of resin on it. All right, I got to figure something out here, because that is being a big issue. Pouring on my resin off the other side here in a second. I was trying to raise up the push pins that I have in the bottom of it. That's a great way to level your painting is with those push pins, because you can, just work them in and out until you've got everything nice and level. The problem is, this was level, and then I've just jarred the table just enough to get it rocking again, and it's gone out of level now. Alright, so before you cover it up, you might want to just sort of degas it like one more time. Take a look at your edges. Make sure everything's good. Make sure you don't have any fuzzies anywhere in it that you might have missed. And then you want to slap something on top of it just as quick as you can. I'm going to hit this with the torch one more time here. And just move it back and forth quickly over the painting. I see another fuzzy as I'm doing this. I think it just landed because I just looked there and it wasn't there. sometimes they actually can come off of the paper towels. You got to be kind of careful about that. Make sure you look at it from several different angles too, because it gets really hard to see what's in there because of the light reflecting. You know, well, actually the light reflecting helps me, but I need to get a good reflection off of the light. Sorry, my head is probably going to get right in front of y'all for a second. I need that reflection to be able to see any little fuzzies that might have landed in there. Helps you see any little air bubbles that you might have missed too. Alright, then you just get all your mess out of the way. She'll rock the table again. Feeling rather unlucky with this tonight. Alright. Sorry, I thought that made a little air bubble right there when I did that, but can't tell for sure. Sometimes it's just some of the little spots from, you know, ink. Different places where it might have dripped something on the Yupo and stained it a little bit. Or sometimes there's a little bit of the brass somewhere, you know, that's left a tiny little dot. I've actually spent forever before trying to pick out things that were something that was actually part of the painting itself. So, something to keep in mind. Especially with some of the brass, because it makes the little lines. And depending on the angle you're looking at it, it can look just like a little piece of fuzz in there. Alright. It is tucked away until sometime late tomorrow afternoon, early evening, before I will uncover it. I might come back one more time tonight, sometime in the next 10 or 15 minutes, just to take one more look at it and make sure I don't have anything running on the edges. But other than that, it's done. We'll come back and uncover it tomorrow once it's dry and let y'all see what it looks like. Alright, I will be back. Alright, it has been about 36 hours or so since the last time I was on here with you all. The only thing I've done to this in the meantime is I did come back just about 15 or 20 minutes or so after I stopped filming and just ran around the edges of the painting again just to get off any more resin that had kind of run over and built up on the sides. So we shall unveil and see what it looks like. And it looks pretty good. You see this? You get this. It's, you know, you can take some scissors and trim it off. Sometimes you can get it to pull off. That one's gonna pull right off. You just pull that stuff off. It'll be fine. But this is your finished product. You can see that beautiful shine that the resin gives to it. You know, there's still just a couple of little spots of fuzzies in there. Not much. I mean, I am at a loss as to how to keep every single speck of fuzz from getting in these, unless you have a specially made booth for doing this, which my husband has actually talked about doing for me, hopefully one of these days. But anyway, I love the look that resin gives these. I mean, you can see the brass. You've still got this shimmer and shine, but it's just a little bit softer. It's a little bit more muted and a little bit softer looking. It's just, even the inks just have a little bit softer look to me once it's been resined. One thing to keep in mind, you know, I talked about this earlier with why you need to seal it with the, you know, UV protectant sprays and things like that. You know, the resin does add a little bit more UV protection to it, but like any art, you know, it will still fade in the sunlight. You don't ever want to hang these in direct sunlight, and if you are, you know, new to it and starting to sell your art, you want to make sure that your buyers understand not to hang these in the sunlight as well, because that will seriously speed up the fading time. And, you know, eventually it's going to fade. You know, maybe not that noticeably for years and years, as long as it's been, you know, finished properly and it's not hung where it's getting a lot of bright light. But, you know, eventually they will fade. All artwork fades. Acrylics, oils, you know, all of it will fade with time. It's UV light is not kind to art. So just keep that in mind, you know, when you're finishing your paintings. Make sure you get plenty of UV protection on them, and make sure that if you're going to hang it in your house, or let your customers know not to hang it in direct sunlight in their house after they buy it. Which, you know, that's just terrible, because you want to hang it in sunlight if you've got a lot of brass in there, because it's just so pretty. Which is another thing I like about using the resin, because it seems to bring out more of the shimmer. It's not as shiny. I was trying to see if I had a painting laying around here that I could show you to compare, but I won't make you wait on me to dig one out to find. But it's spots like these where the brass is pretty thick, would have been just super reflective shiny, you know, almost mirror like, a, you know, gold mirror like. And the resin, even the sealants, some, but especially the resin, seems to damp that down just a little bit. But it's more shimmery looking than it was before. It just, I don't know, I just like it anyway. I like the way it looks, and it just really adds something to it, putting the resin over top of it. The only other step to do is, let me move this because I don't want to leave it on that, is just to take out your push pins and pull off your tape. Sometimes this can be just a touch on the tricky side. Oh, and by the way, once this is done, at this point where it's at right now, you cannot safely ship this if you're selling stuff. That's not even resin holding that in, it's just stuck, I think. While your resin is, technically it's cured, I got dust on it now, I'm going to have to clean it. It can still be damaged rather easily by denting. If you put something heavy on top of it, it definitely can still damage this. It needs to sit for at least a minimum of 2 weeks. And honestly, well, that's going to require some work. I just broke the push pin off in the painting. That had a lot of resin on that corner of it. I'll have to get some pliers or something. Anyway, waiting for a month is best to be on the safe side if you can wait that long. And you see how easily that peels off of there. If this happens, or if you have trouble getting your tape loose, just get an X-Acto knife and just kind of score right along the edge. If you have to, just right along the edge of the resin, you know, where your tape is in there, and usually that'll just score lightly. Don't, you know, dig into your painting, and that'll get it off. But it's very seldom that I've had to do that, because I try to make sure I don't have a thick layer of resin underneath there. So, anyway, yes, so wait a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks, and longer if you can, because while, you know, if you read the directions and things on resin, it will tell you, you know, yes, it's cured after X number of hours, whatever, it'll be fully cured. But in my experience, fully cured is a very relative term sometimes, and I don't believe that it's fully cured at that point, because it is just too easy to dent and damage. I don't think that it reaches its full hardness for at least a couple of weeks. So, you know, keep that in mind when you're doing this. There we go, got it out. That you do need some time to leave it setting. You can't, if you're doing a commission piece for someone, anything like that, you need to be sure that you let them know ahead of time that this is going to take a rather long time to get to them if they want it getting to them looking good. Because you don't want to, especially if someone has already paid you, you don't want them to have paid you for it and you ship it to, this is just water, by the way, y'all. No alcohol or anything in it, just some water. I had some glitter and fuzz on there, so I was just trying to clean it off with a painting. Which also is another good thing to, you know, tell your customers. Just when it needs to be clean, just wipe it with a damp cloth and it'll shine right back up and get the dust off of it. So anyway, there you go. That's it. For any of you all who want to see the painting of this, I should have looked to see what number that video is because I can't remember, but it's not too far back from this one. It's just a few videos back from this one that you're watching right now, if you do want to see the creation of the painting itself. So there y'all go. I hope that that answered some questions that you have about how to finish your paintings once you have them painted. So just make sure you remember, always, always seal them with something. The alcohol ink will scratch, it will rub off. I was trying to see if I had some mess around here just from where I've been playing so I could show you. I'm not sure. You can see where I was playing with some stuff here one day. I have no idea what I was doing. This thing's been laying around here for a long time. But you can rub it. You can see the gold coming off already. It can be scratched. I don't know, you all probably can't see it, but I can see where I just ran my fingernail along it. So you definitely want to seal them just for the protection factor, but also, you know, for that UV protection. Super, super important for these. All right, I hope y'all enjoyed it, and I will be back soon with another video for you. Hope everybody has a great day today. Bye.